for joining us for Broadway Peace Talks, where we take a deep dive into the histories, inspiration, and people who bring Broadway stories to life on stage with Dr. Broadway, Kristin Presley. We hope you'll enjoy this talk on Disney's Frozen.
Thank you to each of you for joining us tonight for our Peace Talk about Frozen. I imagine this one is not one that is a stranger to anybody, but it's interesting. If you've been joining us this season, or even if you've been attending the shows this season, then you've probably noticed a common denominator among a couple of the shows we've already talked about this year, and that is it's a film adaptation that was translated onto Broadway. So already we've talked about Pretty Woman, we've talked about Tootsie, we'll talk about Frozen tonight, and then before you know it, just a couple of months, we'll be talking about Mean Girls. So 4 out of the 9 shows on the season this year are movie to stage adaptations, which is a very common thing happening on Broadway right now. So this fits squarely into that milieu. Which is not surprising to most of you. I know many of you follow Broadway, so you're familiar with this already. But we're going to talk specifically about Broadway. Of course, we'll start by talking about the film, but then it may surprise you to find out that Disney has actually had a relationship with the source material, which is a fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen called The Snow Queen, for decades. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to wrap things up with a great conversation with a member of the company who'll be here in Greenville in just a couple of weeks. Actually, he's returning to Greenville. He was here when Waitress was in town in May of 2018. So if you saw that show, you also got to saw him perform then. His name is Jeremy Morse, and we had a great conversation late last week, so I'm excited to share that with you in just a few minutes. But first, I'm going to start off, just in case there's someone out there who maybe has not seen the Frozen film. Like I said, our conversation will start there. I'm going to show you the trailer for that film so that you can acquaint yourself a little bit with the story of Frozen if you don't already know it. All right, here it is.
Summer in the city of Arendelle. It couldn't be warmer. It couldn't be sunnier, but that's about to change.
Now, you may have recognized the voice talents of actress Kristen Bell in that clip, as well as Broadway veteran Santino Fontana, and who actually won a Tony Award for Tootsie, playing the lead role in Tootsie, and Josh Gad, who was very, very famous for his role in Book of Mormon. So this show, and of course, Idina Menzel, who was not in that clip, but nevertheless is in the film, is known most of all for Rent and Wicked and other performances that she has had on Broadway. So there's a strong Broadway connection running through Frozen, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get further into our talk. But I just want to start here with the film so that if you're not familiar with the story, that gives you a little bit of the background. And then we'll go from there into talking about where the story came from. Like, where did the idea for this originate? So the film premiered in 2013, November of 2013. Of course, if you've been around children for the last decade, you're probably, particularly little girls, you're probably very well aware of that. It was written by Jennifer Lee. The script was written by Jennifer Lee and songwriters Robert Lopez, who had co-created The Book of Mormon and Avenue Q for Broadway, and who had written for television shows like The Simpsons and South Park. He and his wife, Kristen Anderson Lopez, wrote 7 songs for the film, some enormously successful songs for the film. So like I said, it premiered in November of 2013. And when it did, the Disney CEO and chairman called it his proudest moment as the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. It was the #1 all-time Disney animation debut. So it is in some pretty, as you can imagine, some pretty stellar company to have that distinction with all of their animated features. Within the first 2 months of its release, it had already earned $700 million at the box office. Of course, it would go on to gross more than $1 billion and to be the highest grossing animated film, surpassing Toy Story 3 at the time. So enormously, enormously successful. It was the highest grossing film of 2013, not animated film, but highest grossing film of 2013. The album, those 7 songs I mentioned, written by the Lopez's, was the #1 album on both Amazon and iTunes. And of course, It won a couple of Oscars. It won Best Animated Feature and Best Song for Let It Go. Again, earlier I mentioned Idina Menzel. That is her anthem, her iconic anthem from this song, or rather from this film. A couple of interesting distinctives that I want to point out before we go any further with our conversation about this. A couple of interesting distinctives about this film is that it was written by, like I said, Jennifer Lee. Now, Jennifer Lee had also co-written the Oscar-nominated film Wreck-It Ralph, another Disney film, and she was the first. She also co-directed Frozen. And it made her the first Disney animated feature to have a woman director, which is a really incredible distinction. And she was also the first female director of any film that grossed more than $1 billion. So I love that we can, we certainly want to highlight that distinctive of this film. She worked, of course, on the musical as well. So she'll be coming up again in just a few minutes. Another distinctive of this film is that it's the first Disney animated fairy tale that doesn't revolve around a romantic love story. And instead, in just a few minutes, we'll be talking about what the core relationship in this film is. But it's not a love story. Typically, we think of those Disney, the fairy tales, the damsel in distress or the princess, and the white knight rides in and saves the day. But that's not the case with Frozen. And we start to see kind of a bend in the way that Disney handles some of their different stories. So that really started here, which is, I think, an interesting distinctive, that the central relationship is different than it had been for Disney in the past. So like I said, it premiered in November of 2013, and the CEO of Disney at the time said it was his proudest moment as proudest moment as CEO of Disney. But prior to it ever being released, Thomas Schumacher, who is the head of Disney Theatrical Productions, also known as Disney on Broadway, saw a cut of the film. And as soon as he saw it, now he's the one who's been responsible for sending things to Broadway, like The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Mary Poppins and all of those recent Disney on Broadway hits. And he saw a rough cut of Frozen before it ever hit the theaters and immediately knew this would be a great choice to transition to Broadway. So of course, he was thinking that early on. It wasn't officially announced until January of 2014. So not long after it premiered, it was announced it would be going to Broadway, that it would have largely the same creative team. Like I said, Jennifer Lee, the co-writer and co-director, or I'm sorry, the writer and co-director, would be sticking with it. The Lopez's, of course, would be hanging around. Not only would they have their 7 songs that they'd already written, but they would be adding to that number for the Broadway show. And we'll hear from them a little bit later in our talk as well. So that was announced in January of 2014. But like I said, Disney had been toying around with the inspiration story for Frozen for actual decades. In fact, it was brought about by Walt Disney himself. He pitched the idea of doing a series of films based on the fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen, who you see photographed here. Andersen, of course, was a Danish writer, author, and playwright in the 19th century who was incredibly prolific. He wrote about 3,000 different works, several of which have subsequently been dramatized, particularly by Disney, one of them being The Little Mermaid, interestingly enough. But another of them is The Snow Queen. Now, let me give you a little story of The Snow Queen, because you'll see that while parts of the story remain true, not all of it does. So the story of the Snow Queen, very loosely, is that there is a troll king, and the troll king has this mirror. He's a real wicked, bad, mean man. And he has this mirror, and no matter how beautiful a person may be, whenever they looked in that mirror, they would see themselves as despicably, horribly ugly, and obviously hate themselves. It colored how they saw the world, how they saw themselves. So this was a really, not a great troll king, as troll kings go. So he decides at one point that he is going to show the angels themselves. He wants them to see their reflection in his mirror to I guess, give them a wake-up call. So maybe you're not as great as you think you are, angels. Look in my mirror and see how you look. But as he was lifting it up to the heavens to show them, the mirror broke, it shattered, he dropped it, it shattered into millions of pieces, which flew all over the earth. And of course, these shards of glass, if they pierced the eye of a person, then that would color the way that they saw everything. Suddenly they would see things as horrible and awful, just as if they had looked in that mirror. If a shard of glass pierced their heart, suddenly their heart would be stony, icy cold. So that's what happens to this young pair of friends, Kai, a little boy, and Gerda. They were best buddies, played together all the time, had the just absolute merriment always, until one day Kai was pierced by the glass of that mirror, both in his eye and in his heart. So as you can imagine, he turned into a completely different person. Suddenly he was awful to Gerda. He ripped up the garden that they had planted together. And of course, this impacted their relationship. They almost never played together anymore. And one day, Kai left where they were, and he runs into this snow queen. And the snow queen kisses, he says he's cold and he's scared, and the snow queen kisses him on the forehead, and suddenly it erases all of his memories. So as the story goes on, Gerda decides that she knows Kai must be alive somewhere, so she sets about to find him. Eventually she does, and they are able to resume their friendship as it had always been. But that's the story in a very short nutshell of the Snow Queen. As you can tell, it's not similar really at all to the story of Frozen, right? I mean, we could say, well, yeah, but there's this sweet little friendship that's at the center of it. Yeah, absolutely. We could say, oh, it's the warmth of love that melts his icy heart because Goethe comes to save him. Absolutely, that's there as well. But that's really all that remains of the Snow Queen. Nevertheless, this story fascinated Walt Disney from very, very early on. So in the early 1940s, he pitched the idea to Samuel Goldwyn, who was obviously the Goldwyn of MGM Studios, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. He was Goldwyn. He pitched this idea to Sam Goldwyn, and he said, you know what, why don't you, MGM, why don't you do a series of films about the life of Hans Christian Andersen? And then Walt Disney Studios, known for its animation, we will do a series of films about the fairy tales, right? We'll do animated features based on the fairy tales. Specifically, they were looking to talk about the Little Mermaid, Thumbelina, the Ugly Duckling, the Emperor has no the Emperor's new clothes. They would revisit these in animated form. And this idea, for whatever reason, it didn't work. And one of the reasons it didn't work, particularly with the Snow Queen, is because they could not decide what to do with that character of the Snow Queen. She wasn't quite a villain. She really was kind of a throwaway moment in the story, even though it was named for her. So that was one of the reasons why it never happened. Now, if you know MGM's catalog, you know that eventually there was a story or a film made about the life of Hans Christian Andersen with Danny Kaye in the title role. And you can see by Andersen's picture there, he definitely favors Danny Kaye. It makes sense that the two of them, or that Danny Kaye would subsequently portray Hans Christian Andersen. But for whatever reason, the collaboration between MGM and Disney never happened. Obviously, Disney revisited some of these stories later, most notably The Little Mermaid in 1989, and then Frozen, like I said, which premiered in 2013. But even though there was that big gap of time between the original idea and when the film actually came out, Disney revisited this notion of the Snow Queen several different times. In fact, one of the strongest was with the idea in the mid-1970s of a Disneyland attraction that was called the Enchanted Snow Palace. So as you can see here, you've got some renderings of what that might have looked like, how the animatronic characters might have moved in that world. And so this is just some renderings of what that looked like. Now, they obviously abandoned that. If you've been to Disneyland, you know that does not and has not ever existed. They abandoned that idea about 1977 because they decided instead to focus more on thrill rides and on preparing for Epcot, which was coming in the early to mid 1980s. So this was scrapped, but nevertheless, it was another time that this notion of the Snow Queen was considered as potential source material by executives at Disney. So Fast forward to 2008, we have Chris Buck. Now, Chris Buck had co-directed Tarzan, another Disney animated feature, which famously featured songs by Phil Collins and subsequently was on Broadway as well. So he co-directed that film in 1999. After that, he left Disney. He went to do films at Sony, and he co-directed, in fact, the 2007 Oscar-nominated film Surf's Up. Well, not long after the success of Surf's Up, Chris Buck comes back to Disney, and one of the first ideas that he pitched to the head of animation, John Lasseter, was this idea of the Snow Queen. He had seen some of the renderings from previous times when they had talked about animating the Snow Queen and doing things with that story. And he was really, really interested in it. Well, at that point, again, this is 2008, John Lasseter, head of animation at Disney, he had been the head of Pixar. So he was very, very interested in this story as well. And so they decided to begin development under the title Anna and the Snow Queen. Now, if you know Frozen, you know that Anna remained. So Anna and the Snow Queen begins development around 2008. Josh Gad, who portrayed Olaf in the film, he becomes associated with the film at that point. So very, very early on, about 5 years before the film was ever released, Josh Gad was already signed on. At the time, interestingly, Megan Mullally. So if you have ever watched Will and Grace, then you know Megan Mullally's work as Karen Walker on Will and Grace. She also has a great Broadway resume. She starred in Grease. She starred in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. So she certainly had some Broadway chops as well, as did Josh Gad. So Megan Mullally was brought in to play Elsa, who was going to be the other sister. But what's interesting about it is that they still could not come up with what to do with this notion of the Snow Queen. So things kind of fell apart. Obviously, the direction that the film was going to go at that point, they had to completely reverse course. They couldn't make it work. The character of the Snow Queen continued to bedevil them. They didn't know quite what to do with her. So while Josh Gad remained, Megan Mullally was released from the project. At that point, Elsa was going to be the villain in the film, and we'll talk more about when, at what point she became not the villain in the film later. But initially, she was the villain. She was going to be the bad guy. So it was going to be Anna, the good sister, versus Elsa, the bad sister. So there were all kinds of different ideas. Now, in December of 2011, they had just come off great success with their film Tangled, which was a telling of the Rapunzel fairy tale. So they just come off a really great run of that. And Disney announced then, okay, now is the time. We're going to do Frozen, and look for it in November of 2013. So that's when work began in earnest. Like I said, Chris Buck, who had come in, who had done Tarzan and then gone to Sony and done Surf's Up there and come back to Disney, and was the one who originally said, hey, let's revisit the Snow Queen idea. It seems like a really good one. He, of course, would direct the film. Like I said, Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez would do the songs. And it was early on as they were writing together, they were writing particularly the song Let It Go, which I've already mentioned as Elsa's big ballad that we all know, the Academy Award winner, that Idina Menzel belted out so beautifully. While they were writing that song, that's when they realized Elsa's not a bad person. She's just a powerful woman who doesn't know how to control her power. And so they begin to shift the way that they saw that character, and they begin to see maybe she's sympathetic as opposed to being the bad guy. Maybe it's not black and white. And that's when they started to explore this family dynamic between Anna and Elsa, and maybe it's not good versus evil. And so that was the shift when they were writing that song together. And like I said, we'll hear from them in a video clip here in just a few minutes, and they'll talk more about that. So at that point, they're working on this family dynamic. They're really thinking through connections, maybe that the Gerda character from that original fairy tale I mentioned, maybe she is going to show up in the character of Anna. And that seemed to make things much more relatable, to make it a family dynamic. Again, we'll hear from the Lopez's what made them think that might be more relatable, and their unique experiences that led them to these two sisters. So that's how we get to where we got. And want to show you, let's see here. I have this great clip where we talk with, or where you'll hear an interview with the Lopezes, who, like I said, wrote the music for this. There were 7 songs in the film. There are lots more than that. I believe they wrote 13 additional songs thereabouts for the Broadway musical. So they're going to talk specifically about the development of the music for Frozen. They'll talk a little bit about it as it pertains to the film, a little bit about it as it pertains to Broadway. So here you go, the Lopezes.
Welcome back. Married songwriting power couple Kristin Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez are nominated for a 2018 Tony Award for creating the score for Disney's Frozen. The pair recently sat down at the piano in our studio to take us through what it was like to bring their Oscar-winning film to the Broadway stage.
They called me in Disney Animation and pitched me this story, and they showed me these images of 2 young girls, sisters, and the older one was doing all this magic and the little one was just in awe. I just thought Kristen's gonna love this and we have to do it together.
We had a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old when we started. And when you asked the 2-year-old what she wanted to be when she grew up, she would just say, I want to be Katie. And meanwhile, the 6-year-old was like slamming the door and saying, get out! Get out, Annie. So we were writing that. See the pain of the 2-year-old just going, do you want to build a snowman?
The duo first locked eyes back in 1999 at the BMI Lehman Engel Musical Theater Workshop, a program known as a training ground for Broadway songwriters.
Bobby and Jeff Marks came in and sang 2 songs from Avenue Q. And it was the minute Bobby walked in the room with his shiny floppy hair. And I was like, I think I'm going to marry that guy. I really kind of had a love at first sight or lust at first sight kind of moment with him.
She was the only one at that time because I was living with my parents, was writing this puppet musical, and had 0 prospects.
Because everyone else's boyfriend at least could pay for pizza. The first song that stuck really was Let It Go. I was jogging around the park listening to Sarah Bareilles and Alanis Morissette and Adele. Bobby was still listening to Sondheim. But I was able to take off my earbud and say, listen to Sarah Bareilles. Isn't that cool?
Because we knew we had to get the character from the girl with a secret, who's very straight A, buttoned up, prim and proper, to the Snow Queen, whose powers have all come out, the secret's out.
At the time, she was a villain. Hence the line, let the storm rage on, because she was going to come down the mountain and kill the whole village with her snow people. Let it go, let it go, can't hold it back anymore. Let it go, turn away and slam the door. I don't care what they're going to say. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. That's the toddler's favorite line. I dare come to a matinee and watch 60 kids go, cold never bothered me anyway.
Let It Go won the pair an Oscar in 2014, but turning the hit film into a full-fledged musical sent them back to the drawing board.
We only wrote 7 songs for the movie, but we wrote 23 songs for the Broadway show. What Do You Know About Love was one that I was really excited to write. Anna's philosophy, she's that girl who was raised on the Disney princess stories of someday my prince will come and he will kiss me and everything will be solved. And a very practical guy who climbs a mountain for a living doesn't like people that much. And what's fun is that in the course of the musical, they grow, they affect each other and change each other.
Scaling, scrambling, and too many steps are counted, and the work doesn't stop.
Maybe for you.
Love's not an easy climb. You have to take your time.
Get a whole life, that's the plan.
It's not a plan. Love's not a thing you get. It's work and tears and sweat.
So says a sweaty, smelly mountain man.
Oh, what do you know about love? What do you know about love? We had read this article recently in the, I think it was the New York Times about the Danish concept, Scandinavian decor concept of hygge, the idea of coziness, being together.
We knew that we could have this opportunity for a fun charm song.
On YouTube, we found these 2 people talking about it. Okay, the Danish word of the day is hygge. Hygge, 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 hygge. We're like, all right, that's it.
That's it. There's a song.
Hygge means comfortable. Hygge means cozy. Hygge by the fire with your cheeks all rosy. Hookah, 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 hoogly, 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 hoogly. I will translate more.
Fancy.
The backstory of Snow Queen Elsa was expanded with the help of a new Act One power ballad.
Dangerous to Dream, I think, was the first thing we wrote for the Broadway musical. It's basically an I want song for somebody who's not allowed to want something. Here on the edge of the abyss, knowing everything in my whole life has led to this. And so I pull inside myself, close the walls, put up my guard. I practice every single day for this, so why is it so hard? We would be nuts if we didn't say we're incredibly grateful to be here. I'm also really grateful that I met him and had this opportunity to work with my favorite Broadway composer.
It's so much fun, and it's so fulfilling to get to build these things.
It is. We do remind ourselves every once in a while when the stress gets high. There's just that minute where we go, this is what we used to do on our dates. This is what we do for fun, and we do it for free. So.
All right. So, like I said, this Frozen, it was announced in 2014, January 2014, just a handful of months after the film premiered. It was announced officially that it would be moving to Broadway. It actually opened on Broadway in March of 2018. So I know many of you in this audience follow this pretty closely. So you know how quick a turnaround that is. Just 4 years to get it from the announcement to opening night is a really astounding thing. It opened on Broadway in March of 2018. It was a $30 million investment to bring the show to Broadway. As you know, investments are going up and up and up. And certainly with the show that would be expected to have the spectacle and the wow factor and the razzmatazz that a Disney musical is expected to have, $30 million was what it took to get there. It played for more than 800 performances on Broadway before the pandemic shut down. So it shut down in March of 2020, like all shows on Broadway did. And it had made, at that point, more than $150 million. So it had certainly recouped its investment. And it was decided throughout the course of the pandemic that it would not reopen on Broadway, but rather it would be pushed out on tour. It was already beginning to tour pre-pandemic. So they were going to really put their investment behind the national tour, which is what brings us to the Peace Center. Like I believe George mentioned early on, it will be here. Opening night is April 6th, and it plays through April 17th. So it's a great spring show. Ironically, as winter is thawing into spring, Frozen is here with us. So it's kind of a poignant moment for us to have Frozen at the Peace Center, and we're so lucky to have it and excited for it to come to town. Now, as I promised, we're going to conclude tonight's conversation with a member of the company of Frozen. He plays the Duke of Weselton. If you know the story at all of Frozen, then you'll be familiar with that character, the Duke of Weselton, or Weselton, as the case may be. He has toured through Greenville before, and I'll let him tell you about it. So tonight we are privileged to have with us from the cast of Frozen, Jeremy Morse. Jeremy, welcome. You play the role of the Duke of Weselton, or is it Weselton? How would you?
No, it's not Weselton. It's absolutely Weselton. Thank you so much for entertaining me with that. Just setting me up. I play the Duke of Weselton. Thank you so much for having me on, Kristen. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're so glad to have you. So I want to ask you a couple of things. First of all, I want to hear some of your favorite roles that you've played in the past. Also, I know that you were previously with the national tour of Waitress. I wonder, were you with them when they came through Greenville in 2018?
Certainly was. And I fell in love with the city at the time. And I kept telling my wife, I was like, we have to move to Greenville. We have to at least buy a house in Greenville. It's such a cute, awesome little town. It's freaking cool. I love it.
Thank you. Well, welcome back. We're glad to have you. So what are some of your other favorite roles you've played in the past?
Definitely Ogie from Waitress. That's like up there. Finch in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, one of my favorites, and Barnaby in Hello Dolly. So those two are the more well-known shows. And then this show called Blood Song of Love by Joe Iconis, who wrote Be More Chill, which was on Broadway 2 seasons ago. that was one of my favorite shows ever. I got to play an evil villain named Lococadrillo, the crocodile, and the little show off Broadway, and it meant so much to me in my career. So fun, great show, great team.
Yeah. Oftentimes those are the most fun, the little shows off Broadway. Oftentimes they are. So you mentioned your wife being, or was she here with you in Greenville the last time?
No, she was not. She's just heard about it. So
Okay.
Like, all right, I gotta come, I guess.
Right, but she's here this time. Is that, or she will be?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And she's coming, not just your wife, but also who will be with you? Who else will be with you?
Our little baby, who will be 7 months old when we are in Greenville. Her name is Clementine.
Yeah. So this is Clementine's first national tour, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, she was born right before it, so no opportunity for a previous national tour. Her first Broadway national tour.
Well, so tell us about your process as touring around the country, but also how it's complicated now by having a 7-month-old. What's that like, traveling with a baby?
It's definitely a lot. We have a lot more stuff than the last time we were on tour. So we drive. We're driving the tour now. We have a Subaru Ascent. We absolutely love it. We've got a rooftop cargo box that is completely full, and we have trunks that travel with the show to have so we can change stuff out. So we don't have to carry all of her. We're going from 3 to 6 months to 6 to 9 months clothes, and all of our travel bags for our stroller and everything. So we're ready to go. With a lot of stuff, but it's fun. It's an adventure. It's awesome to watch Clementine adapt to new spaces very quickly, and she's great in the car now, which is awesome. It's been such an amazing adventure watching her grow as we go from city to city, and it's hard to believe we've been doing this for 4 months. We joined the tour when she was 2 months old, and she's 6 months old as of 10 days ago. So it's been an adventure. But yeah, we usually book Airbnbs, and we get to see parts of the town and adventure out into every single city and neighborhood that we get to live in and perform in.
Well, I imagine Clementine has quite a fan club in your castmates.
Absolutely. People do love her. It is so much fun. People are like, when can I hang out with Clementine? So we have a group of people who are very adamant about hanging out with her, and they're wonderful. They'll come and watch her and play with her while we take a nap, or while we pack our bags over the weekend, or while we teach a class via Zoom. So it's very wonderful to have a support system of really awesome actors. And Clementine's great with people. She loves meeting new people, and she loves playing. It's she's an awesome kid.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a great experience for all three of you. That is fantastic. So now we're going to talk specifically about Frozen. I read one reviewer said, you've never seen Frozen like this. So what do you think they meant by that? How is this different? Obviously based on the 2013 film, 2018, it premieres on Broadway. How do you think that reviewer, what differences do you think he or she was referencing?
Well, I think the animated film is absolutely incredible. But there's something, we can sit at home and watch a movie any day of the week, but to go out and see live theater and watch real human beings interpreting a story and navigating that story as a human is something that we all crave, that immediacy, that excitement, that being tricked before our eyes with the magic that is on stage. It's absolutely stunning. I got to see the show when I came back into it in Salt Lake City. So I got to sit back and actually watch the show, which is a rare thing. Principal actors usually don't get the opportunity to watch the performance that they're in. So I was very fortunate to do that, and it was absolutely stunning. The special effects are absurdly cool. The costumes are gorgeous, and those are just the things that you get to see. And then the music is insane. Bobby and Kristen Lopez wrote all of these new songs for the stage version specifically, with Stephen Arenas arranging and orchestrating with a whole team. It's so incredible. You only get to experience a little bit of that with a movie, and you're just immersed in it in the theater. And then from the Broadway production, there's all these different technical elements. They had to kind of redesign a bunch of parts of the show for the road. And in that process, we got to rehearse the show anew. And the creative team got to, kind of tinker and fix things that maybe they had run out of time with in the Broadway production. And then work on that with a whole new group of creative actors and humans to reinvent that. So there's that aspect. And there's a new song called I Can't Lose You, which is so beautiful, is in Act 2 and really focuses in on the sisters' relationship.
Excellent. Well, thank you for delineating that for us. Now, obviously, Disney did not invent the use of puppetry. However, they did perfect it with The Lion King a number of years ago. I wonder, though, if you would talk about the use of puppetry in Frozen, the musical.
Yeah, absolutely. It is absolutely stunning. So the character of Sven, the reindeer, he is a puppet, and it is an incredible physical feat. We have two actors, Colin and Evan, who are in that puppet. They alternate. They each do 4 shows a week, and they are on stilts. And when you see it on stage, whenever Sven enters in the beginning of the show, the entire audience applauds, because it is absolutely incredible to watch this. You would think that it's an animal, but it's a person interpreting a reindeer in an incredibly elaborate puppet with moving ears and eyes, and it's spectacular. So there's Sven, and then there's Olaf, our favorite snowman, who is portrayed by F. Michael Haney. And the way that F just manipulates this puppet is absolutely stunning, hilarious, and heartfelt as well at times. It's so good. I can't even get over it. I constantly watch all 3 of those performers from the wings navigating the show through their puppets.
Yeah, now does that require special rehearsals? Like, do they have prep before the show? How does that work for them?
Yeah. Well, during our rehearsal process, the actors who played in the puppets, they're called to rehearsal a week before all of us to get back in physical shape, because it is such a physically demanding and physically specific task of manipulating those puppets. So yeah, they also have extensive warm-ups that they do before the show. So I know Colin and Evan, who play Sven, they get there usually half hour before the half-hour call to do a physical warm-up to maintain their bodies, because it is so strenuous.
Yeah. So we talked about puppetry. Another thing that Disney has perfected is spectacle. And you alluded, generally speaking, to that before, but I wonder if you can get specific about some of the spectacle that we'll see in this show.
I'll get as specific as I can without disrupting the Disney magic.
Fair enough.
But the way that they navigate lighting in this show is incredible. And Disney Theatrical invested in some really amazing projector work. So there's some moments where there's a specific moment towards the end of the show where the entire ensemble is wearing white, and they create a pose, like it's absolutely stunning. And then through projections, which basically like detects where they are, it paints this it's like ice is moving across all of their bodies to freeze in this moment. And it's absolutely incredible. It always gets applause. And it's truly stunning. There's that, the watching Let It Go on stage is absolutely incredible, with the projector work and the lighting on a stage that assists in Elsa's magic as she's creating her ice palace. It's beautiful. I couldn't say it more. It's beautiful. And then also there's fog and huge scenery pieces. The back wall is an entire LED screen that is shifting and moving and changing scenery for specific scenes to set the tone and to set the space that we're living in and throughout the show. There's so much. I could talk forever about this.
Well, you've spoken already with a reporter for the Greenville News, which is our local newspaper here. And you mentioned in that conversation that you said it's a big show, but it's intimate at the same time. So I wonder, what did you mean by that? What can you do? We talked about the spectacle, and yet you say it still has an intimate quality to it. Can you go into that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. I think the intimacy comes from the humanity that is brought out by the performances and the performers. With that, yes, there are these big production numbers with huge lighting and special effects and an entire ensemble dancing, singing, everything you want going to a big musical theater show. And then there are these moments where you get to see two sisters, Elsa and Anna, played by Caroline Bowman and Mackenzie Kurtz, and they get to come together and have these really special, vulnerable moments through scene and through song that aren't so in your face, but more quiet and draw you in as an audience. And I think those are the moments in musical theater where you get to listen and watch somebody navigate a tough situation or a conflict. And that's where you start to gain empathy. And I think that's what's so important about musical theater, teaching people empathy, putting yourself in another person's shoes and seeing how that feels. I think even from a young age, and even as adults, we constantly do that. It's why we engage in different mediums of art and stories, because we want to feel something else. We want to see what it's like from this person's perspective. And I think it's done masterfully in this show, and on a grand scale with the spectacle, as well as an intimate and meaningful scene work way.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. As our time wraps up, I have just one more question. I wonder if you could give us one reason why people should go see Frozen at the Peace Center, April 6th through the 17th. One reason.
One reason. You're going to lose your mind. I mean, I wish. I mean, yes, you're going to have fun watching me. I love my character. It is so much fun. You will laugh. You will laugh. You will cry. You will feel all the feelings. Come for an incredible night of storytelling and theater. Even if you're an adult, and by yourself, literally just go out on your night off and see this show. It will be fun. You will tell all your friends. You'll be the coolest person in the office.
Well, you've given us lots of reasons. So thank you for your time. And we look forward to having you and Clementine and your wife back in Greenville in a very short amount of time. We'll see you soon.
Oh, thank you. We can't wait.
Thank you. All right, so there you have it. That is Frozen on Broadway, coming here very soon, just a couple more weeks at the Peace Center. So I'm going to check the chat here and see if I have any. Lots of hellos. Hello to everybody. Let's see. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Oh, your 8-year-old daughter is coming. I'm so excited. I think this is a great show. There have been several shows that have been so fun this season. I took my 9-year-old to see Hadestown, and he loved that. So, but this is particularly one that I think can be a real gateway for children to get into the theater. So I'm very excited. Hello, Charlie. I hope you love the show. Thanks for tuning in tonight. You're going to think it's awesome, Charlie. Enjoy the show. Mary Beth, I see your comment. Can you rewatch? I do believe it will be available on the Peace Center's website. So check there. I think they are stored there. So thank you for tuning in. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Thanks for visiting with us tonight. Let's see. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for joining with us. Lynn Davis says she loves the Peace Talks. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I love doing them. And I look forward to the day when we can maybe see each other live and in person again one of these days. Hopefully that's coming soon. So let's see. Next up, Kim. I keep seeing Kim raised hand, but I'm not quite sure how to access that. So Kim, I apologize. It says raised. I don't know how to access that. So I'm going to apologize that I don't know how to answer your question. I'm a little bit of a Zoom novice, so I'm sorry for that. But thank you again for all of you for joining us. I hope you'll join us again. Jesus Christ Superstar is coming up next. We'll be doing a Zoom Peace Talk on Tuesday, April 19th. It will start at 6:30 p.m. as all of these will. I hope you will join us, tell your friends, and to all of you who are planning to see Frozen at the Peace Center, enjoy the show. To those of you who aren't yet sure, I hope that this Peace Talk has convinced you that it's a great way to spend an evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And if I don't talk to you before, happy Easter.
Thank you for tuning in to Broadway Peace Talks. For more information or to purchase tickets, go to our website at peacecenter.org. And don't forget to like and click the subscribe button on this page.